Hi, I'm Larry Nespoli with the New Jersey Council of County Colleges. At New Jersey's community colleges, we believe that our students, as well as all citizens, need to be informed about the important issues facing higher education. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, working for great public schools for every child. Wells Fargo, New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and banking under the principle of stewardship. The law firm of Gibbons PC, Cohn Resnick, providing accounting, tax, and advisory services for more than 90 years. And by New Jersey Natural Gas, proud to support education in our communities. Promotional support provided by the Star Ledger and NJ.com, Everything Jersey. And by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and its monthly magazine, New Jersey Business.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Steve Adubato. You may know, if you know this series, we talk to healthcare leaders from across the country. We're about to introduce, back by popular demand, Stephen Jones, president of Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. Good to see you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be back again.
So much going on in the healthcare world. We're doing this as we approach the fall of 2013. Are you nervous at all as the Affordable Care Act begins to be implemented? You say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not ready?
Oh, no, I can't wait for 32 million Americans to get health insurance next year. I think it's unconscionable that our country has not had health insurance for the neighbors next to us or our kids perhaps when they graduate from college. It's a great step that 32 million Americans will get health insurance.
But a lot of changes have taken place. We talk a lot off the air about this, and you've said to me that this impending change or these changes have spawned, encouraged, pushed a lot of things. Some hospitals have merged, some hospitals have gone away. But the other thing that's happened is information sharing, information network. More specifically, there is a statewide health information network that did not exist up until not too long ago, right?
Right, being developed right now.
Describe what this state health information network is in terms of electronic records that has potential a huge impact on patient outcomes. What is it?
Right. Steve, everybody remembers a medical record, a paper chart in their doctor's office or in their hospital.
Can we get Steve Jones' chart? Right?
Can we get Steve Jones's chart?
Right.
Now, electronic medical records, that information is available right away online. But yesterday it was only available in one hospital, and hospitals weren't connected. The state has a system of regional health information organizations, and Commissioner O'Dowd,
Commissioner Mary
O'Dowd from the Department of Health and Governor Christie are promoting the development of a New Jersey statewide health information network. That's a great thing, that people's health information will be available wherever they travel in the state.
Break it down. Give me an example.
Sure. An example, Mr. Smith comes into Robert Wood Johnson with an acute asthma attack. He's given a new medication that he never had before, and it helps to control that asthma. When he leaves, that information is in his electronic medical record. He can look it up from home. He doesn't have to ask for a copy of his paper chart anymore. If he enrolls in a health information exchange, he can get that information. His local pharmacy can get that information. It helps with refills. It helps to make sure there aren't medication allergies. That information, as we travel on vacation, we go down the shore they can get our health information if we need help there.
What about if you travel out of state?
If you travel out of state, there are nationally being developed networks. New Jersey is setting up a statewide network, and that's huge for us. It will improve quality, it'll help manage costs, and it'll promote keeping people well and not being in hospitals.
But it's interesting, we keep talking about the New Jersey Health Information Network. Given the fact that we're seen obviously in multiple states, but we have a big audience in New York,
right.
Do we depend upon other states doing this as well, Steve? So say people are traveling back and forth, Trans-Hudson. You're in New York.
Steve, there's
Are
a
they
national,
doing it too?
There is a national trend with all states looking to develop.
But not every
these-
state has this law.
Not every state
Or this
has
policy.
this. Not every state does, but boy, it's being developed across our country.
Because if you don't, say New York or Pennsylvania, Connecticut, where we're seeing, if the state chooses not to do this, what's the risk?
the risk is I can't get the health information. The doctor who helps me in New York doesn't know that I just had the same lab work, doesn't know what x-rays and tests I had, doesn't know that I'm a cancer survivor because maybe I can't talk and I can't tell them that. But
Risky.
the system will improve quality of care and it will manage costs much better and promote wellness.
The other thing that we've talked about, and I've done a lot of coaching and I don't want to call it training, but helping folks communicate effectively throughout the hospital world. And I'm always fascinated by doctor-patient communication. Yeah. It's a very important part of this, isn't it?
It's a critical part of this. If you picture the mom brings the child in and wants to make sure that the pediatrician can communicate with mom, perhaps communicate with the child. The biggest question, the most frequent questions I get are, I don't understand the doctor. I don't understand this. And our medical staffs today spend a lot of time working with patients and their families so that their families understand what's going on. It's a great thing when a patient goes home and their family knows exactly how they can help. But that transition in care is important at Robert Wood Johnson. We developed a program over the last several years. We received a major grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for $4 million to develop a transitional care program.
A transitional care program, what does that mean?
That means when the patient leaves our hospital and is at risk to get readmitted, nationally many patients get readmitted to hospitals within 30 days after they leave. Maybe they don't take their medication. Maybe they don't schedule that doctor's appointment. So we are paying attention to that transition. We have a nurse and our Robert Wood Johnson visiting nurses that will go into the home. We'll schedule your doctor visit before you leave. We'll go into the home and make sure you got those medications. Make sure you have the healthy food that you're supposed to for your lifestyle, because we want you to stay well and not get readmitted in 30 days.
And there's a foundation grant to support that effort?
Robert Wood Johnson Foundation gave our hospital a $4 million grant to help develop our transitional care program.
I want to ask you about mergers and acquisitions happening all over the place. First of all, it's a trend that is not going to stop anytime soon, correct?
It's a trend that won't stop anytime soon.
Okay.
Looking at how we can serve our communities better, how we can promote wellness.
As we do this program, Robert Wood Johnson has something going on with Somerset Medical Center. I don't know how much you can and can't talk about, but as we do this program, what is it? Because people have read some things. What is it? What could it potentially mean?
Sure, it's early in the development, but we were grateful when the Board of Trustees of Somerset Medical Center chose Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital to be their partner. We are developing an alliance with them that will better serve the communities, better serve their medical staff. There's a lot more to come in the future, but we look forward to working with them.
Steve, is it almost impossible in this day and age for a hospital to say, you know what, we're just going to be the best we can be. We're just going to put blinders on, not look around at what's going on around us, and we're going to provide quality patient care, have a great team, have a great fiscal operation, no mergers, no acquisitions, no partnerships. We're just going to do our thing. Doable?
Steve, there are great standalone hospitals in New Jersey, but I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it will be harder and harder to serve your community and to serve your medical staff standalone. We know the cost of healthcare nationally cannot be sustained, that we know we need to promote wellness. That is better done when people work together to serve the community better. It will be hard and harder for standalone hospitals over the next 5 years.
Final question. Is there something unique and different about the healthcare and hospital environment in New Jersey as opposed to New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut? I mean, you know this business. Is there something unique about New Jersey, or is it just what you just described, pretty much the case throughout the Eastern Seaboard?
No, at the Robert Wood Johnson Health System and all the great systems in New Jersey, we are focusing on providing value for our customers. We're working collaboratively to make sure we serve our communities. And I think that's a a great trend in New Jersey, Steve.
That was well said. Very diplomatic as well. Stephen Jones, President, Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital. Appreciate it, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The healthcare and the hospital discussion never ends because it's always changing. It's always important. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
If you would like more information on this program, or if you'd like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Visit us online at oneonone.org, or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD.
There he is, Jonathan Alter, author of the book The Center Holds, Obama and His Enemies, which is in some ways a sequel to your first book called?
The Promise, President Obama, year one.
Yeah, this is the third and fourth year of first term, right?
That's right. But this one is not as focused on Obama in the White House, although it has a lot about that. This book has a lot more about his enemies, about the 2012 campaign. It's the first book out about that campaign. And I also have a lot about what happened in the Chicago headquarters and how Obama and his campaign re-engineered American politics.
By the way, for those of you who do not know Jonathan, I would be surprised if you don't. Jonathan is an analyst with NBC and MSNBC. He writes for...
Well, I'm writing for a lot of places.
I was going to say, that's why
I just
I
had a
set
piece
you
in
up
the
to do that.
NewYorker.com
Go ahead, say it again.
Just had something in the NewYorker.com a couple days ago, and I'm writing for a lot of places. And I'm also, these days, I'm an executive producer of a new television show starring John Goodman that's created and written by Gary Trudeau.
Look at you.
So I go out to Kaufman Astoria Studios in Queens every day and try to manage a big budget on a big television show.
You're diversifying. You're a mogul. You're a media mogul.
It debuts in November on Amazon. We're shooting 10 episodes this summer and fall.
He's not uncomfortable with plugging. I love that.
Sorry about that. I had to get that
no,
in.
Don't be sorry. That's okay. I like that. We love having Jonathan because he's a great writer and a great talker, and he breaks things down. And he had unbelievable access to the people who know, including the president. Let me go through some of these. I'm just going to throw some things out at you. In many ways, you say that Obama was not that confident in 2012 that he would win. And in fact, when he was told that he believed, that those around him believed that he was going to win the race, in fact, on election night that he won 2012, he said, I only believe it when Fox tells me.
Right.
Make the case.
So he was at that point, he was kind of joking because he knew he had won the election, but he, you know, there was a lot of speculation that the Republicans would do what they could to make it a contested election.
How?
Obama had hundreds
We're
of
talking
lawyers.
voter suppression?
A lot of voter suppression. I have a whole chapter called the Voter Suppression Project. This was a coordinated effort in 19 states, every battleground state except for Nevada, to suppress Democratic turnout. And the interesting thing about it, and of course the battle's still going on today, but the interesting thing about it in 2012 is that a combination of court decisions and pushback from the Democrats prevented these statutes from going fully into force. So the Republicans didn't have the laws on the books in places like Florida and Ohio that would have made it very, very tough for Obama to win. And yet the backlash against voter suppression was so big that more blacks voted in Ohio in 2012 than in 2008. So the Republicans got the worst of both worlds. They didn't get the voter suppression laws helping them hold down Democratic turnout, and they sparked a huge backlash.
You know, in Jonathan's book, and by the way, go out and get it. It's called The Center Holds, Obama and His Enemies. Jonathan makes the case, compelling case, that Obama's enemies hate him, present tense, in a way that is very different than most political opponents dislike each other. Very compelling case in a chapter that is called Obama Derangement Syndrome. It's also in other chapters, but this chapter in particular, chapter 3, where those who don't like Obama, the birthers and others who believe Obama not born here, a whole range of Republicans and others, not just voting against him, not just campaigning against him, but make the case as to how dangerous they believed he was and is for this country.
Mm-hmm. Right. He was the other, and there's always been this kind of nonsense about
Not just
our
race, though.
presidents. But here's the difference. So we've always had this. Remember, if you you know, read pamphlets or obscure websites in the 90s, you would have people saying that Bill Clinton killed people at an airport in Arkansas, right? Or they said Dwight Eisenhower was a communist. Yeah. But these things were on the fringes of our politics. The birther nonsense went to the center of our politics. So people were asked on Meet the Press, do you believe the president was born in the United States? And this is just kind of garbage, right? And so it was at that point that Obama, you know, got Hawaii to release his birth certificate, but of course that didn't satisfy.
And challenged Donald Trump and made him look like the ass that he is.
Right. And then
Because
there's,
Trump
and then I have a
right.
really fun scene in the book where Stephen Colbert does a number on Trump that's a little bit, you know, it's an off-color joke, and he and the president talk about it. And then Michelle Obama comes over and says to the Colberts, you know, we've watched that video over and over and over again of Colbert talking about Trump letting him dip his privates into Trump's mouth.
Yes, but the whole thing is...
the point of the Colbert bit, which was on television,
right,
was so that nothing else will come out of it.
But the whole thing is and really it isn't so much about Trump, it's that the mainstream media gave Trump and others real attention when Trump is saying, Obama's not an American, make him prove that he's an American citizen. And Obama wanted to ignore that and ignore Trump and the insanity of that. And ultimately he was like, okay, Donald and everyone else, here it is, now what?
Right.
The fact that the President of the United States had to do that.
Yeah, and it made Obama really angry that he had to do that, because he didn't think that other presidents were subjected to that.
About race or something else?
Well, you know, one of the things that I explain in my book, which is, I think, in a new light now after his comments on Trayvon Martin, is that the president in public and in private is very similar. It's not like the two Clintons, where you had you know, the policy wonk Clinton and then the Clinton of appetites. With Obama, a lot of what you see is what you get, except on one subject, race.
Make the case.
So in private, he talks a lot more about race than he does in public. And that was what was so interesting about these comments on the Trayvon Martin case.
Trayvon Martin could have been my son. Trayvon Martin could have been me. Well, I understand it. I lived it. You were surprised they did that?
And you know, the locked car doors and the clutched purses and all that. It's the kind of thing that in the past he has talked more about in private than in public. So that represented a kind of a narrowing between the private and the public. One of the things I try to do in the Center Holds is explain what Obama's like when the doors are closed, behind the curtain. So for instance, talking to people like Al Sharpton, Tom Joyner, the black radio host, Michael Eric Dyson, other black leaders in the Roosevelt Room, I have chapter and verse of the kind of things he says to them. And, you know, for instance, he says, look, if I just go out there and say black, 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 none of this goes through. But healthcare helps blacks disproportionately. Food stamps helps blacks disproportionately. This is the kind of thing that he can say in private, but because he's very conscious of being the president of all the people, he doesn't talk that way as much in public. Or the way he cursed out Cornel West in private. So what I'm trying to do, Steve, in this book, from beginning to end, really on every page, is tell people things about familiar events that they don't know because they haven't been reported and they took place behind closed doors. Whether it's about Chris Christie, you know, Mitt Romney, Barack Obama, the whole bunch of them.
Okay, let me try this. As someone who's a student of communication and fascinated by the way people present.
Yeah.
I was fascinated sitting there watching and then analyzing later on MSNBC, not on the politics, but on the presentation of Barack Obama in the first debate. Reading your chapter 24, the first debate, page 319. Jonathan's analysis is fabulous. Go out and get the book and read it. How could he be that bad in the first debate? Tell us what we did not, we're looking at some pictures there. Explain to us what we did not understand that only you, with the access you had and have, can tell us.
So that's a picture of debate prep, where they do these mock debates. And my chapter is almost entirely about the prep, what people didn't see. And it turned out that he was 0 for 6 in the mock debates. He lost to John Kerry, playing Mitt Romney every time.
He loses to John Kerry in the prep?
Playing Mitt Romney every time, all 6 mock debates. So his people know, his coaches know, Axelrod and the rest of them,
David Axelrod.
Going into that first debate, they know he's going to lose. And Ron Klain, who is in that picture and was Al Gore's top aide and was the head of debate prep, he told me later that he would go to his grave not knowing exactly what went wrong, but he concluded that basically everything went wrong. Strategy, tactics, message, the mood of the president. But a lot of it had to do with the president's attitude toward politics. He sees himself in some ways as above the nitty-gritty requirements of politics, above the phony theatricality of politics. He has never liked debates, and he's never been particularly good at them,
But
as he
Jonathan,
admits.
respectfully, is that not
So
an elitist attitude if you're going to play in the
it
game?
is. It was elitist, and what was interesting was that he recognized it after he got stopped in that first debate. So you remember there was a viral video of Samuel L. Jackson going into
And with the F, right?
when he goes into these people's house, the Democrats, and he says, "Wake the F up!
Yes.
Wake the F up!"
Wasn't he talking to the president?
Well, what happened was, so he was in the video, he's talking to an average family.
Yes.
Right? So the president says to his friend Patrick Gaspard, who's our new ambassador to South Africa, goes, "I didn't realize Samuel L. Jackson was talking to me." And so he
Did he
got the
wake
message.
up?
Oh yes. Well, you saw him in the second
He
and
was
third
great.
debates. So he said to his
And
people.
he challenged Romney.
He said to his people, after that first debate, I don't like debates, I'm not very good at them, but I will win that second and third debate and I will be reelected. And he's a guy who prides himself on hitting the jump shot at the buzzer.
Under pressure.
And under pressure, and he almost always does rise to the occasion.
So
when
let's
he
make
has
the
to.
case in the time we have left. How did he beat the heck out of Mitt Romney and the Republicans, all of his enemies who gathered and thought he was the devil and the worst human being in the world? How did he destroy them in the 2012 election? Make the case.
Well, it was a combination of them having just run a much better campaign than Romney did. So Romney's the self-described numbers guy, right? But he rejects big data, analytics, and he runs a kind of a vague hope and change campaign. Obama, former community organizer, he runs almost a Bain campaign, unbelievably
Bain meaning
efficient.
Bain Capital.
Like Bain Capital.
They have great analytics. They have great
and they
statistics.
have these kids they call it the cave.
Out in Chicago.
In Chicago, these 20-something kids who are working till
Is that the cave?
2 in the morning. Yeah, that's the cave. They're working till
What
2
are
in
they
the morning.
doing?
What they're doing is they're building models. And what I try to do, everybody knows Obama had the edge on digital technology. I try to explain how. What did they do to change politics in a pretty fundamental way? And it wasn't just data scientists in there. They took the smartest people they could find. They had a child prodigy, a biophysicist, 3 professional poker players.
Doing what?
Building models and designing algorithms. And you have to read the book to find out. You have to read the book to find out the connection between the technology and the shoe leather on the street and how they made those canvassers and door knockers so much more efficient.
They knew who they were looking for,
and then,
Jonathan.
And micro-targeting. And then they took their fundraising up tenfold over last summer. Tenfold to $150 million a month. Average donation $66, where Romney has over $1,000 average donation. They ran the first billion-dollar campaign, but they did it by cracking the code of how do you use the internet, how to use social networking, how do you use these models and micro-targeting to essentially reestablish old kind of politics, which is friend
Retail
to
politics.
friend, Facebook friend to Facebook friend. People listen much more to a friend than they do to a television ad or a robocall
Or a political
something like
endorsement.
that, or an endorsement. Yeah, that's very old stuff. So you need to do those other things. And of course, they had terrific television ads, and Romney didn't. Romney ran what his own people described as a Mad Men campaign.
Give me a minute on
out of
Romney.
the
You got 2 minutes left. Give me a
1950s.
minute on Romney. Why was he so bad? The 47% blew all those people off. Nobody really cares
Right,
about
so
them.
that was a pivotal story, and I got fascinated by the bartender who changed history, Scott Prudy.
The guy who had the video.
I spent hours with this guy, and what was his motive? An average guy changing history. That's Scott. He's an animal lover, and he saved a woman drowning in a car in the Everglades. And I asked him later, how that affected him. He said, I realized everybody else was standing around doing nothing on the riverbank, and he said, I realized if you can jump in, you must jump in. He felt like he had a responsibility to try to prevent Mitt Romney from becoming president, and he did a lot.
And
because
that's why he turned that video on?
If Obama had not had a 7-point lead in the polls after that 47% incident, he would have fallen behind after the first debate and would have been very hard for him to catch up.
You
even
think
with
that
the
video was crucial in
pivotal,
Obama winning?
Pivotal. And
this bartender took the video.
The bartender.
Nobody knows it. He's catching
Right.
Romney say, what did he say exactly again about the 47%?
He said 47% of Americans are takers, and I'll never be able to appeal to them. They're just taking money from the government. He's talking about not just Medicare and Social Security recipients, veterans. Half the country he was writing off.
And the bartender got it.
Right.
By the way, let me plug the book. Can I plug the book? One
Love
more
it.
time. Got a few seconds left. The book is called The Center Holds, Obama and His Enemies.
Got a lot about Chris Christie in the book, too.
That's just one of the many reasons to go out and get the book. Jonathan Alter, our great friend here on public television. See him on NBC, MSNBC, and he's writing everywhere. Great stuff, Jonathan.
Hey, thanks,
Thank you.
Steve. Great to see you.
That was great.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, Wells Fargo, New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group, the law firm of Gibbons PC, Cohn Resnick, and by New Jersey Natural Gas. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been made possible in part by New Jersey State Nurses Association.
Hi, I'm Daniel Misa, and I'm a staff nurse who works in a hospital. Nurses are educated and prepared to work in many places and areas, like hospitals, clinics, in research, and in the military. As members of the New Jersey State Nurses Association, we thank you for the trust you've given us. Since being included in the Gallup poll in 1999, nurses have been ranked as the most trusted profession every year, except in 2001, when firefighters received top honors. We are proud you have given us that honor.